Hey everyone. So I made a video last week about JD Vance, Vice President Vance's interview on the Joe Rogan show. And one of the clips that I discussed there was when he said that there are elements within the Israeli government that want indefinite war, that want the war to go on indefinitely. And then rather than, treat that as a kind of like odd choice of words or maybe a slip of the tongue, he doubled down and stressed the point back to Joe Rogan and said, they have no specific objective. They have no other objective. They just want war indefinitely. They want to prolong the war indefinitely. And I found that to be so jarring of all the things that he said, because it's one thing to say, well, I thought the MOU would work. I think that we can negotiate with these people and just be wrong about that. But to actually say that there's a segment of the Israeli population, that there's a segment of the Israeli government that actually wants war for no clear objective whatsoever, just to have war indefinitely, it seemed to me so over the top. And he also said in that Joe Rogan interview, kind of revealing comment where he said, people think that I just take my marching orders from Tucker Carlson. And we all know that he has a close relationship with him and that that they're aligned in some ways, and that Tucker's son worked for JD and all that. There is a relationship there. And I was thinking about what JD Vance said and how much it bothered me to say that there's people in our government, in our society, who want war for no objective, even if they're the biggest hawks in the world. They have an objective, but to say they just want to have war perpetually. I was thinking about this as I watched a clip that a friend of mine sent me the other day of Tucker Carlson speaking about Prime Minister Netanyahu. And you'll see the connection in a moment. So I'm not a huge fan of playing clips of Tucker, but I think we should take a look at what he says here. It's kind of over the top. Get ready.
This suggestion that you've made on Israel's goals, that the Israeli goal is chaos, it's dysfunction. What would be the natural, obvious, well-documented effects of this? Migrant crises in Europe, further destroying Europe.
Of course.
That's always been an Israeli goal, destroy Europe.
Yes.
Do you really mean that?
Well, I don't know. Netanyahu means it. He said it. No one watches. See, the thing is, nobody watches.
Where has he said his goal is? Where has he said his goal is to destroy Europe?
Rome is the enemy. Rome, meaning Christian Europe. The Prime Minister of Israel has said this on camera. I would refer you to the internet. You should watch it. It's fascinating. Why would Rome?
Don't you think he's making a reference to history and the Romans destroying the temple rather than present day Rome in Europe?
I don't know. Why would something that happened in 70 AD be relevant for a secular modern head of state? I don't understand that. Like, what is he saying? I mean, look, the worldview here is totally different. That same prime minister has said repeatedly that we are fighting Amalek. And people are so biblically illiterate, they don't know what he's referring to. He's referring to the Amalekites. And there are a couple of different stories in the Hebrew text in what we call the Old Testament that describe what he's talking about. And what he's talking about is the elimination, truly the genocide of a group commanded by God and described in great detail, called the Amalekites. So this is not a Western view of war. The Western view of war is, we punish the wrongdoers and most people have nothing to do with this, so we don't kill them too.
So Israeli leaders and many ordinary Israelis as well reject the idea that this is a genocide. I hear that is your view.
Okay, that's the part of the clip I wanted to play. So listen to what Tucker's saying there. First of all, on this Rome issue, you hear what he said there. He's saying that Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that Rome is the enemy. Now, he also blames the migrant crisis in Europe on Israel because Israel wants to sow chaos and destroy Europe. Okay, so first of all, let me show you where he gets this harebrained idea that Prime Minister Netanyahu said that Rome is the enemy. And because he can't imagine why it would be relevant to talk about something that happened in 70 AD to a modern state, he must be talking about Christian Europe. As though now, let's look at the clip. This is what he's basing it on. It was a reporter who was interacting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and asked him what book he was currently reading. Check it out.
We want to know what you're reading now.
What I'm reading?
Yeah.
It's a book by a historian by the name of Barry Strauss. For the Jews against Rome. Jews against Rome.
What made you pick it up?
Well, we lost that one. I think we have to win the next one.
Okay. That's the clip that Tucker Carlson is referring to. Understand? Someone asked Prime Minister Netanyahu what book he was reading. He said he was reading Barry Strauss's book, The Jews versus Rome. And he said, like, why are you reading that? He says, well, we lost that one. We got to win the next one. Okay. That's literally, that is the clip that Tucker Carlson's referring to. So Tucker Carlson, who is, I mean, he's an intelligent enough person to know that he is deliberately twisting this. So he's a dishonest actor here. But I want to talk about why this stuff works and what it's playing into. Because if you listen to the argument that Tucker made there, he's like, you know, first of all, he's anti-West. He wants chaos. You know, Netanyahu wants chaos. Netanyahu, you know, the Israelis want chaos. They want to destroy Europe. They see Christian Europe as the enemy. They see Christians as the enemy. They see, you know, that they're just this, their goal is destruction and chaos. Based on the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu said that Rome is the enemy, and he tells her as though, like, you know, she's not paying attention, and he's basing it all on this clip. Now, and then he went on to talk about the Amalekites, that Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that we're fighting Amalek, which is true. After October 7th, Prime Minister Netanyahu and many Israeli people said, we are fighting Amalek. So Tucker says, like, well, you know, if you look in the Old Testament, you see that Amalek were supposed to genocide the people. We're supposed to wipe out every man, woman, and child. So saying that we're fighting Amalek is implying that we're supposed to genocide people. And then look, and then the rest of the clip, which I didn't play, he goes on to talk about how there's genocide happening in Gaza, and we've beaten that horse to death. The numbers show that the claim of genocide is absurd. We all know that. We all know that about the civilian casualties, and I'm not going to get into the weeds of that. And notice what he said there when he talked about what Tucker said when he was saying that that's not what modern warfare is about. We don't wipe out nations like that anymore. We just, you know, we try to go after those responsible, and everyone else we don't touch. Okay. So first of all, what did Prime Minister Netanyahu mean when he said that we're fighting Amalek? Did he mean that we're supposed to kill every man, woman, and child? No, clearly not. Population in Gaza has grown since the war started, but that's a separate issue. Because Tucker Carlson, well, forget about him. He's a bad actor. But it's very easy for people to buy this because, like, oh my gosh, it's this, like, you know, obscure word from the Bible, and what it means to Jews is genocide. And you look in the Bible and you see these stories where they're supposed to kill everybody, and King Saul even gets rebuked by Samuel for not killing every man, woman, and child, for not destroying everything. So that's what Netanyahu is implying. No, in Jewish culture, in Jewish lore, in Jewish parlance, this goes into rabbinic literature and everything. Amalek refers to when you're fighting an enemy who is single-mindedly devoted to destroying the Jewish people, even to the point of their own detriment, that they pour all their resources only into their hatred and desire to genocide the Jewish people. It is the Jewish way of saying we're fighting pure evil. It's the Jewish way of saying we're fighting pure evil. And we're fighting evil. Oh no, how could you call them evil? Oh, there's men, women, and children there. Yes, it's true. And this speaks to a problem that the West has with identifying evil. And this is why the Tucker Carlson argument works on young people. So in order to understand this more fully, I'm going to play you another clip. And this is a clip of Dennis Prager, a recent clip of Dennis Prager talking about good and evil. Okay, so let's pull this up on screen. Hold on. Here we go. And it is right here.
What I've come to realize in the course of my lifetime is that a great segment of people living in a decent culture, namely Western civilization, do not understand evil. They think that everybody is sort of like them. I'll never forget when I came home when I was 21 years old. I came home from 4 weeks in the Soviet Union. And I went around speaking, and I spoke at a church about the Soviet Union. And a woman stood up and said she was a member of a Soviet American women's group. And they're just like us. They're just like us. That is such a common phrase among naive Westerners. They're just like us. But they're not just like us. That's the point. They live in a different value sphere. Iran's greatest aim is to destroy the West, beginning with annihilating Israel. That is all they live for. They don't live to make a good Iran. They couldn't care less if their people suffer. They slaughtered 40,000 of them, peaceful demonstrators, and they just machine gunned them 40,000. Some of them were still living when they were put in body bags and buried alive. These are monsters. And I've come to realize that people in the West are so naive. And, going back, the visiting of Hitler, oh, peace in our time. The British Prime Minister, oh, Hitler wants what we want. He just wants things that are good for the Germans. No, he didn't. He lived to destroy other civilizations, beginning as usual with the Jews. This is a very big problem that people do not understand evil. It's huge. And that could bring the downfall of Western civilization.
That's what I wanted to play you. There you go. So let's get into the psychology of this a little bit, about how Westerners think. When JD Vance gets up there and says at the signing of the MOU, just after the signing of the MOU, or right after it, when they were in Geneva or in Switzerland, wherever they went, in Lucerne, and he said that we're going to create a deconfliction mechanism whereby Israel and Hezbollah could have some dialogue every time there's some potential escalation. And I made a video about this at the time, and I was like, Hezbollah has one purpose. There's only one reason they exist. There's only one reason the organization, Hezbollah, the party of Allah, the party of God, the party of Allah, was created. It was created in order to destroy Israel. That's why it's in southern Lebanon. That's the sole reason for every single weapon they have. It's not to kill Lebanese people. It's not to defend anyone. They're not the Lebanese army. The sole purpose of every single cent spent to create every single thing that Hezbollah has is to kill Jews and destroy Israel. Period. That's it. So why should Israel have a conversation with them? Why should you have some de-escalation mechanism? And when people like Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and JD Vance talk about how the people we're dealing with in Iran are reasonable people, or back when Steve Witkoff was meeting with the Hamas guys and met with the Hamas leadership and said that, and one of them had lost a child because he was a terrorist and he was killed, and he had lost a child, and they were talking about, and he had compassion for him. There is a deep, deep belief. It's so deep that left to right, even President Trump, who's very hawkish, Westerners cannot get past this idea that at the end of the day, their enemies as well have the same basic interests that they have. They want some money, they want some power, but in the end of the day, they want what's best for their people. After the 12-day war, Trump said explicitly that he was going to lift the sanctions on Iran so that they could sell their oil again, because we've caused so much damage to their country that they need some money to rebuild parts of their country. They didn't use the money for that. They used their money to ramp up their ballistic missile production while their people continue to starve. It runs so deep that when President Trump keeps saying, if we hit them a little hard, we keep hitting them harder, they're eventually going to want a deal. It's because he believes that in the end of the day, they don't want to lose all of their material infrastructure and weaponry, and that they'll give up on their genocidal aims. No, they will not. They don't prioritize the things you prioritize at all. They are evil. And the lack of willingness, so it's not just not understanding that they prioritize things differently. It goes to not understanding that there's such a thing as evil. This is why I go back to Tucker Carlson's Amalek comment. Like, it's so terrible to say that we're fighting Amalek, that we're fighting abject evil, and that it is our responsibility and our obligation to destroy it, to make it no more, because it is evil. It's like you're not allowed to say that. You're some sort of unrealistic extremist, because these people, there's this whole group on the right in America. They call themselves foreign policy realists. That really, it's all about like these ideological aspects of it. This is all nonsense. That really, it all boils down to money and power and the right leverage. You can solve any problem through negotiation. It's just it's a terrible blind spot. And you go back to the end of World War II. Maybe I'm repeating myself, but this is worth repeating because I've said this so many times. You go back to World War II, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in 1943, I believe, declared that the only acceptable outcome, the only acceptable end to the war would be unconditional surrender by the Japanese and the Germans. Unconditional surrender. Declared that was the only acceptable outcome of the war. And that war could have ended earlier. The Germans were ready to surrender conditionally beforehand. The Japanese, it was pretty clear that they had lost the war long before the war actually ended, but until there was unconditional surrender. And in today's context, it would look absurd. Why do you need them to unconditionally surrender? Like, why are you insisting on that? Why are you still fighting to the point that they're on their knees and they actually say they surrender? And the answer is you must bring them to that point. It is a moral imperative. It is a moral imperative to bring them to the point of unconditional surrender. Why? Because unconditional surrender means that the defeated party is saying explicitly, I lost. You won. I am defeated. So what's the value in that? That you have an indoctrinated population, indoctrinated with some genocidal evil ideology. And yeah, a lot of them are going to die as a result. Sorry, Tucker. Yeah, a lot of women and children are going to die. This is what happens when nations go down evil paths. It causes big death and destruction. And you know what? It's like surgery. It's a violent act. And it has to happen in order to excise that evil so that many more millions of people could have a good life. And if you don't excise that cancer called evil, and it takes some civilians with it, if you don't do that, you will not be eradicating evil ever. It's the way it goes. It is a very harsh reality of life. It is part of destroying evil. And it's why the West has been incapable of destroying evil since World War II. So let me get back to what surrender does. When the evil party unconditionally surrenders and their people see that, they know that, it's clear, it's open, it is stated publicly that we've surrendered, we waved the white flag, we have been defeated. You know what happens to the ideology? Look at Japan. What happened to the genocidal ideology of Hirohito's regime? What happened to the genocidal ideology that had captured the imagination of the vast majority of Germans? What happened to it after World War II? It very quickly, it was just, there was this change that took place. Right? That's what changed. Why? Because unconditional surrender changes people. And you know what? This is biblical. This is actually right there in the Bible. There is a chapter of Psalms that is about war. That is the subject of the chapter, about war. It's like a theology of war. It's chapter 83 of the book of Psalms. And at the end of Psalm 83, it talks about the let me get down to the end of the Psalm here. I'll just pull it up on my screen here. But you can look it up. Look up Psalm 83. And you get down to the end of the Psalm. And in the second half of the Psalm, it talks about, it turns into like a prayer to God to, to defeat our enemies, to help us wipe them out, and to help us destroy them. And then it says, fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be shamed and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish. It says shame, different words for shame. There's different translations, but it says the word shame like 3 times. Ashamed, shamed, 3 times in 2 verses. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be shamed and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are most high over all the earth. Why do I care if my enemies are ashamed? I want them defeated. I want them not to kill me anymore. Why do I care if they also have shame? 3 times in 2 verses at the end of the psalm, it says we have to bring shame upon our enemies, as though that's the goal of war. And the answer is yes. Oh, it sounds so cruel. The goal is shame. No. It's because we actually care about them. It's because we actually care about humanity that we want them to have shame. You see, what's shame? Shame, this is a very simple definition. I'm going to state the obvious. Shame means that you were wrong. That's why you feel shamed. That's what shame means. Shame is what you feel when you feel that sting of having been wrong, of having acted wrong or thought wrong, believed the wrong thing, and then you realize it, you're ashamed. The Hamas terrorists on October 7th who were raping and killing were not ashamed. They were proud. They filmed it. They were proud of it. Unconditional surrender is the very, it's the real world acting out of shame. It is admission of defeat, of being wrong, of having lost. It's the ultimate in shame. It brings the evil genocidal society that loses, Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and when they say we lost, it's not we have a negotiation and we'll agree to this and we'll agree to that, we'll save face and we'll claim victory. No, unconditional surrender means that you demand of the defeated party that they say publicly, we lost. That changes things. That's how you defeat evil. So if you ever wonder why the West has been incapable of defeating evil since World War II, there hasn't been a victory since World War II, a real victory where the enemy is vanquished, the enemy is defeated. The good old-fashioned destruction of evil doesn't happen anymore. It's politically incorrect. Everyone, the bad actor, every conflict ends with some sort of negotiated settlement and the bad actors remain in place. Unconditional surrender brings shame upon the evil, which means that they recognize that they were wrong and they start seeing the truth. And that's what the end of that psalm is. Let them bring shame upon them, that they may know that you, O Lord, are most high over all the earth. In other words, they start seeing the truth. It's the only way to get past this evil. The lack of willingness to embrace the truth of an existence of good and evil, and there's the responsibility of good to destroy evil. As Dennis Prager says, it is the greatest threat to the West. It is the greatest threat to the West. And Israelis, the Israeli people, because we've experienced it, and we still have moral clarity, we understand that we're fighting evil. It's very clear to us. It's very clear what we're doing. And to someone like Tucker Carlson, who's in his mindset, or the people he's talking to, forget about him. The reason that his propaganda works on people he's talking to is that your average Western young person also doesn't really believe in evil. So when he says things like this, it resonates. That's the danger of it. I hope this clarified some things. Please drop a comment, especially on this video. Please drop a comment. Let me know what you thought of what I was saying. I think I'm bringing up some important issues here. And please share. Please make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Please make sure you're subscribed also to Israel 365 News. Putting up very important stuff there. We put up another interview with Dr. David Wormser there today. But I think this is a big issue. We need to really think about, take the big picture look at what we're doing here. What is all this about? All this fighting, all this war? We want to bring. How can we justify allowing evil to persist and continue and pass the buck to the next generation to have to deal with it? It is the responsibility of good people to defeat evil. And it even means that we have to risk our lives to do so. That's what the generation that fought World War II understood. We need to get back to that. And if the Western world is not willing to get back to that, they will lose. It's very simple. They're under attack right now from this invasion of Islam. And those guys play for keeps. And if you're also not willing to play for keeps, you will lose. Sorry to be a downer. But these are big things to think about, especially this week for Jews. We're now thinking, we have a lot of contemplations of the evils done to us in history, the depth of our exile and the suffering we went through as a result of the destruction of the temple. That's what this week is about for us. So it's a good time to contemplate these bigger issues. God bless.